All top 10 proudly present. Top 10 modern national groups that have legendary kingdoms. Everyone has a history, as does every nation. These legends have some quite accurate records as their foundation. However, some of them are made up or embellished versions of age-old folktales that have been passed down orally. The rich mythologies of contemporary people groups often diverge slightly from the accounts of their long history. Number 10. Van Lang. The semi-legendary monarchy that would eventually give rise to contemporary Vietnam was known by the moniker Van Lang. It was governed by the Hung dynasty, who oversaw a caste system of marquises and underkings. The Lac, a group of peasants whose name meant canal or ditch, were dominated by these aristocrats. In truth, the Vietnamese people were initially referred to by this term. There is little concrete evidence to support the claim that this civilization was formed on river diversion and rice paddy farming. Van Lang was claimed to have been subjugated by the Kingdom of Tuk, a civilization that lived in what is now Sichuan province in southern China. The legendary Tuk king in Duong Duong is claimed to have expelled the Hung kings and protected his domain with a supernatural crossbow. In actuality, the Yue refugees' escape from the Chinese state's push into what is currently southern China may have boosted the Tuk kingdom's power. In any event, Tuk and Van Lang's conflicting desires were immortalized in Vietnamese mythology by the mythical conflict between the powerful mountain spirit and the aggressive water spirit. The monarchy of O Lac eventually incorporated Tuk and Van Lang. The name is believed to have been inspired by the goddess O Company and a particular kind of bird called a lac. The foundation of the eventual kingdom of Nam Viet would be this hybrid state. The history of O Lac is buried in tales of myth and legend, despite the reality that this society would come to be gradually influenced by both Indian and Chinese culture. This is true even if it left some historical documents behind. Number 9. The Piasts. While AD 966 is sometimes given as the year the Polish state was founded, Mieszko I, the nation's first king, actually converted to Catholicism in this year. This Christian king introduced the people to the Piasts, Poland's first royal family. However, where did the Piasts come from? After all, their history is shrouded in folklore. Initially, Neds, or military commanders, controlled the culture of walled cities in Poland. This changed as the Gniezno region started to increase its power, finally bringing about unification. This area of pagan farmers became known as Polonia in Latin texts. The people were referred to as Poloni, and Poland's current name was derived from that term. However, the tribespeople of Poland gave themselves the name Lech, which was derived from an older, fabled founding figure. The expansion of the nearby Saxon kingdom most likely served as the Piast dynasty's existential response. The early Polish princely court was therefore replaced by a hereditary dynasty founded by a man by the name of Piast. In his yard, Piast, who was supposed to have been from a peasant family, was reportedly celebrating his son's coming of age when two strangers allegedly made a prophecy that he would lead his country. Popiel, the former king, is claimed to have died by being eaten by mice in a dungeon because he was evil. There is still another legend between the Piast dynasty and the introduction of Jews in the region. After their controlling prince passed away in the 9th century, the remaining Polish princes gathered at the city of Kruszewicz to choose a new monarch. The prince-to-be would be the first man to arrive in the city in the morning, they decided after failing to reach an agreement. Even though at the time gunpowder was not acknowledged in Poland, it turned out to be a Jewish businessman by the name of Abraham Porkovnik, which translates to dealer in gunpowder. The traitor then awarded Piast, a wise man, the princedom, and Piast went on to start his own dynasty. Number 8. The Pishdadian and Kayanian dynasties. The prehistory of the Persians, or Aryans, must be mostly inferred from classical writings like poems or the scriptures of Zoroastrianism and Hinduism. The Persian people were founded by Gaya Maritain, whose name means life mortal, or, in other traditions, the human race. He is said to have governed during the early beginnings of domestication of animals, when Mazda was the only deity to whom humans could turn for direction. During his final years, Maritain fought those who sought to take his throne. These fights claimed the life of his kid. His great-grandson Hushang, who later became a renowned general, founded the Pishdadian dynasty, the first of the Persian dynasties. Because each Pishdadian king was said to have ruled for thousands of years, there is considerable debate regarding their historical existence. Agriculture, firemaking, the use of metals, and the calendar were all developed under Hushang's reign. His son Tamuras succeeded him, and under his prudent guidance domestication, art, and law all advanced, fighting Devas. But despite being wise and righteous, his son Jamshid was rumored to have fallen out of favor. He may have become so arrogant that he began to worship Devas, or he may have thought of himself as a god. In any case, his lords withdrew their aid, and 10 years later, the dynasty was overthrown by the harsh foreign ruler Zayak. The legendary Persian dynasty that came after was the Kayanian one. Near the conclusion of the period, the Assyrians and Medians took control, although according to the archaeological data, the Persians were actually under the sovereignty of the kingdom of Elam the entire time the Kayanids were believed to have ruled over them. The majority of the information we know about the Kayanids comes from the epic poem Shahnameh, sometimes referred to as the Book of Kings. At the end of this time, Achaemenes, who is credited with starting the Persian dynasty, destroyed Median dominance over the Persians. He might, however, have been a fictional character put up by the later King Darius to support his authority after Cyrus. Number 7. Gojoseon. According to legend, the Bear clan's mythical king Dangun founded the first Korean state in 2333 BC. The Samkyusa, Supplementary Tales of the Three Kingdoms, a compilation of ancient manuscripts compiled by the monk Irian in the late 13th century, has the first mention of this empire, which was formerly known as Joseon. Irian asserted that Dangun's rise to power was facilitated by gods, wild animals, and a very strange relationship. The king of heaven, Huan In, was reportedly questioned by his son Huan Ung about the possibility of ruling his own kingdom on earth. A poll was conducted to determine the best place before Huan Ung was sent to earth with 3,000 supporters and 3 celestial riches. He came at a sandalwood tree on Mount Tebek San, which served as the capital of the Shinchi people. He appointed the spirits of wind, rain, and cloud as ministers in a government that established the first laws. Later, 2 animals, a bear and a tiger, came to Lord Huan Ung and asked to be changed into people. Huan Ung told them to stay in a cave for 100 days, eating only 20 garlic bulbs and a bundle of mugwort. The tiger gave up in the middle of the task, but the bear finished it and changed into a woman. In return, the bear woman, Ung Nyeo, gave Huan Ung presents, but he soon discovered that she was single. When Huan Ung transformed into a man so he could have a sexual relationship with her, Dangun, the father of Joseon, the first Korean dynasty, was born. Dangun ruled for 1,500 years before retiring to the mountains and becoming an eternal mountain god. All of this is obviously pure myth, and the establishment date of 2333 BC stated in medieval writings is not supported by the archaeological evidence. The early Mumun culture, which emerged around 1500 BC and was characterized by a peculiar ceramic design, is sometimes compared to the fabled kingdom. Early leadership titles for Dangun may have included Altar King, and the year 2333 BC is probably the product of comparing like fake Chinese historical dates. But when King Taeho founded a Confucian one in 1392, he picked the legendary name for his new dynasty because of how well known the Joseon mythology was. Then, the initial Joseon was given the name Gojoseon, Old Joseon. Many South Korean textbooks continue to treat the legends of Dangun and the founding of Joseon as historical fact, while North Korea still refers to itself as Joseon. Number 6. Pagan and Tagaung. Because they combined fact and oral folklore, early histories of Burma were amusing but unreliable. The Burmese kings claimed to be descended from Piasts, a legendary ruler of a former pagan kingdom, pictured above. Piasts is the progeny of a sun god and a Naga dragon princess. Later, when the realm was tortured by foes known as the gourd, the tiger, the bird, the boar, and the squirrel, Piasts defeated each of them individually. A tribute of 7 maidens per week was consumed by the bird, who was represented in later history as the most terrible adversary. At the beginning of the 19th century, this historical custom was modified in order to increase the legitimacy of the ruling Konbaung dynasty. The members of the pagan royal house were thought to have been generated as mere scions in the old Tagaung kingdom, which was founded by a man by the name of Abhiraza. Abhiraza escaped his native India and established a new empire in Burma. He is said to have been a member of the same Sakya clan as the Buddha. Royal historians then followed the bloodline to even more obscure legendary ages. They further claimed that Konbaung rulers may have finally been descended from the first king of the land, Mahathamada, who is said to have been descended from the sun. As a result, Burmese kings referred to themselves as members of the solar race. Number 5. Xia Dynasty of China. The Xia Kingdom, the country of China's first dynasty, has a troubled background. Evidently, legends are so ingrained in historical descriptions of the Xia that Chinese historians continue to vehemently dispute the reality. However, archaeological evidence really backs up some cliched features of the folklore. The Xia dynasty is thought to have been founded by Huangdi, often known as the Yellow Ruler, the first Chinese monarch. Along with expanding China's boundaries, he is credited with developing the writing system, the art of gathering silk, medicine, boats, and wheeled machinery. The Yellow Emperor was followed by 3 sage kings with the names Yao, Shun, and Yu, each famed for his wisdom. The story goes that Yao gave the crown to Shun, who he thought was the most deserving candidate, by displacing his own sons. Shun was famed for his intense filial piety, despite the fact that his family was evil and made attempts to assassinate him. Yu is renowned for forming the dynasty system of administration and developing a way to control flooding on the Yellow River. The Xia would be ruled by Yu's ancestors for many years. The last emperor of the dynasty was known as Jia or Digui. But he was viewed as a bad leader. In some sources, his depravity is linked to a fundamental lack of virtue, while in others, his sexual immorality is emphasized. Heaven expressed its displeasure with Jia through astrological events like planets aligning in the sky. The height of such divine power occurred when 2 suns appeared in the sky to herald the start of the new Shang dynasty. This served as the mythical basis for the Mandate of Heaven concept, which defined the ebb and flow of dynasties throughout Chinese history. Number 4. Dynasty Zero. The first Egyptian dynasty is said to have been founded by the mythological king Mene, sometimes known as Min or Menes in Greek sources. According to Egyptian priests, Mene united Upper and Lower Egypt and established Memphis as the nation's capital, according to Herodotus. According to an Egyptian historian by the name of Manetho, Mene, the first human king of Egypt, having obtained the throne from the god Horus, supposedly embarked on a foreign conquering expedition before being dishonorably swallowed by a hippopotamus. Other historians state that Mene died from a wasp or hornet sting. Another odd folktale claims that Mene is pursued by his own dogs, drowns in a lake, and is then rescued by a kind crocodile. But the story of a king named Mene doesn't seem to have begun until the 18th dynasty. He could actually be a descendant of an early monarch by the name of Narmer, who ruled in the south and engaged in warfare with the north. Narmer is traditionally regarded as the founder of the first Egyptian dynasty, although some scholars argue that he actually belonged to a far older polity known as Dynasty Zero. Dynasty Zero's kings may not have actually been pharaohs given their failure to unify Egypt. Nevertheless, in a ceremonial palette that was found in the ruins of a temple to Horus at Hierakonpolis, Narmer is portrayed as engaging enemies outside the city walls while in the guise of a bull. Number 3. Kirat Kings. The earliest notable dynasty in Nepal was the Kirat dynasty. The Kirat people are believed to have migrated into the Kathmandu Valley around the 9th or 8th centuries BC. All that is known about the historical reality of the 29 Kirat kings who are said to have ruled for 1,225 years is that they were shepherds who liked carrying long knives. According to legend, Yalambar, a ruler who deposed the local Abir lords, founded their dynasty. Yalambar allegedly communicated with the deity of heaven Indra and participated in the battles described in the Mahabharata. Both mortals and gods fought in these conflicts. In an effort to help the Kauravas, who were on the losing team, Yalambar tried to do so, but Lord Krishna detected his plans. Krishna conquered the Kirat army by chopping off Yalambar's head, preventing a drawn-out and bloody struggle. Legend has it that Xia Dynasty, the 7th Kirat king, was in charge when the Gautama Buddha visited the country. Although he was allowed to preach, he didn't attract many adherents. Jayadasti is additionally claimed to have participated in the Mahabharata battle, however this isn't very reasonable chronologically. Legend has it that the weak monarch Gasji's rule, which was terminated by Nimisha, the ruler of the hostile neighboring Sambanchi people, is when the kingdom finally fell. Number 2, Magna Hungaria. The nomadic progenitors of the Hungarian people are supposed to have originally appeared in western Siberia. They were an isolated Ugric people, distantly related to the Finns, and influenced by the Iranian language of their neighbors. Their further westward journey through the Urals, around what is now Bashkiria, is unknown for the most part. They had no known origin when they arrived in the Carpathian Basin. In the 13th century, Bela IV of Hungary sent 2 Dominican monks to the east. They were told to search for a location known as Magna Hungaria. After an initial futile search north of the Caucasus, one of the monks perished, where old encampments from the migration period were still present. The survivor Julianus moved north to explore the Volga region. There, he identified distant Hungarian forebears, which apparently satisfied him. The long Attila the Hun rule is the source of many Hungarian tales. One well-known myth claims that Hunor and Magor, 2 brothers, are the children of Nimrod or Menrod, a legendary hunter. One day, while out hunting with their men, they came across a magnificent white stag. The boys chased the animal until it vanished from view in a marsh. Out of irritation, they set up camp, but when they awoke the next morning, they found themselves on a beautiful, fruitful island. The brothers intended to settle there, so they rode home to seek their father's blessing. But when they went home, they saw a bunch of women dancing. The brothers abducted 2 of the girls before riding off and encouraging their guys to follow them. However, in some stories, the women turn into fairies and manage to flee just in time. Magor became the father of the Hungarian Magyars, whilst Hunor became the father of the Huns. Number 1, Western Europe's Trojan founders. Roman traditions occasionally asserted that the Trojan heritage of their society. Later, this idea was embraced during the medieval era. Then, it would be possible to argue the legitimacy of royal families' claims to parts of the former Roman Empire. Trojan founders are mentioned in the myths of the Goths, Venetians, Scandinavians, Byzantines, Normans, and Turks. And that's not even mentioning the 2 most powerful countries in Western Europe, France and England. The story of the French Trojan origins was developed in the 7th century by a monk by the name of Fredegar, who said that after the death of their leader, Priam, the refugees from the Trojan War had split into 2 factions. A group of people settled in Macedonia and became the ancestors of Alexander the Great, while others resided in Phrygia under the leadership of a king named Frigga. Later, this second group relocated to the area between the Rhine and the Danube while serving a second monarch by the name of Francio or Francus. There was supposed to be a replica of Troy being constructed, but it was never completed. Several variations of the Trojan origin tale were told over time, depending on how politically advantageous it was to share an origin with the Italians. One writer even went so far as to assert that the Trojans themselves were originally descended from the Gauls, transforming the story into a proverb about going back to your roots. Geoffrey of Monmouth, who wrote Historia Regnum Britanniae, the history of the kings of Britain, which was released in 12th century England, provided a detailed account of the origin of Britain in the 13th century BC. Before his birth in Italy, it was predicted that Brutus would murder his parents, be exiled, and eventually find the greatest peak of glory. The prophecy, according to Geoffrey of Monmouth, was accurate. At the age of 15, Brutus was exiled for the birth-related murder of his mother and the hunting accident death of his father. When he arrived in Greece, he released 7,000 slave Trojans. Under the direction of the goddess Diana, Brutus led his troops to Albion, an island where the only inhabitants were a few of giants. Everything came to an end in the 9th century AD when the Saxons eventually took control of the region. He then gave his kingdom the name Britain, and another 99 rulers followed in his footsteps.